Welcome to Writer's Den. I'm Brenda Joyce Patterson. Writer's Den is a program that highlights, showcases, and otherwise uncovers all things literary in Polk County and beyond. Today we have Barbara Meyers. I consider her romance author extraordinaire. She's written 10 books. Her latest book is Phantoms. And so we're going to just jump right in and talk to Barbara. Hey, Barbara.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, we've known each other a little bit. We've done writing stuff together and what have you, but this is the first time that we'll get a chance to talk about writing in front of the camera.
That's true.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a little scary, isn't it?
A little bit.
But that's the good part. That's the good part. You've done a lot of different things with your writing career. And I'm going to say something and you're going to go, what? But I actually consider you like the epitome of today's author. And the reason why I say that is because you've written books, you've been traditionally published, you've been self-published, you've negotiated the no man's land in between. And not only have you written books, but you've written romance as well as books outside of recognized genres. So I'm going to skip a little bit of that to say, how did you get started writing?
I read a lot of romance novels when I was in my 20s. I guess I discovered them and I loved them. And I read one book, I don't remember the author, but I got so angry with the way the book was written and how it ended. And I was like, well, that's stupid. And I literally threw the book against the wall and said, I can write better than that.
I've done that.
Yeah, it's not that unusual of a story of how authors get started, actually. So that's how I started. Of course, my very first effort is still hiding under my guest room bed because it really wasn't that good.
Right.
But I found that I so enjoyed the creative process. And I went from that idea to the next idea, and I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote.
Whoa. Well, so you say you started out with romance, but I've just said that you write outside of romance. You write under the name A.J. Tilloch. Let me ask you, those books are screwball fantasies, the way you call them.
That's what I kind of term them as because I can't really define what genre they should be in. And other people have said speculative fiction.
Right.
Paranormal. There are so many elements of so many different genres that's why I call it kind of a genre-defying series because I don't know where to put it. Therefore, I don't know how to let the readers find it because I don't know how to categorize it.
Right, right. It's interesting that you say it like that because, believe it or not, last night I was reading an interview with Jonathan Mayberry, and he was talking about when he was a kid, he got a chance to know authors like Ray Bradbury and Richard Matheson, who are science fiction, paranormal kind of something. And they were talking about the importance of not so much worrying about genres, but you as a writer worrying about, are you writing what you love?
True.
So you obviously loved it, so you wrote it.
I loved it, and I thought it was so far out there that I could really take it anywhere. So that's one of the things I loved about it was that kind of freedom. But it's hard to maintain that pace. And it's great. You love what you're doing, but if nobody's reading it, it's you come back to then kind of what's the point which is why I only have 2 books in that series written. I have another one. I did the NaNoWriMo.
Right, right. We've talked about that a
couple
lot.
of years ago, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write the 3rd book in the series, and I started writing it, and I went, yeah, and then I was like, I have no idea where this is going, and I found myself kind of going back and reading what I had written, loving it, but I was like, okay, what happens now? I hadn't really thought it through, so I kind of just went back to romance.
Okay.
And that was also one of the reasons I started writing that Grinding Reality series, was because romance is a really crowded market. And I thought, you know, it's hard to break into, it's hard to get recognition, it's hard to get a following because there's just so many other authors writing in that genre. And I thought, okay, I'll write something different. Well, I wrote something so different.
That it was hard to find.
What are you going to do?
The following for that.
So I've learned a lot along the way, let me just say.
Well, but that's the good thing. That's the good thing. There's so many questions that are sort of crowding my mind right now. Well, first I'll ask this. Do you consider yourself a romance writer, or do you consider yourself a writer, just kind of overall? Or is it even important to you to put any kind of label except writer on yourself?
I started out so strongly in romance. I think that's what I identify with, but if you go on my website or look at my bookmarks, what it says is Barbara Meyers, beach reads, and so much more.
Yes, that's
because to me a beach read is one of those sort of the kind of books that don't require, you know, popular fiction doesn't require a ton of, let me think about that. You know, it's just reading for pleasure. But a lot of the romance novels cross into what we would call mainstream or women's fiction. They're bigger. They're beyond just the relationship between the hero and the heroine. And like I said, Grinding Reality it's not even in the romance category. So.
But didn't you say that they had a happy ending? People end up with each other? Is that what you said about that one? We talked earlier. Please forgive me, audience.
Grinding Reality is not a romance.
Okay.
No.
That doesn't have...
Oh, that was Phantom that we were talking. You asked me if Phantom was a romance, and I said, yes.
And Phantom is your latest novel.
It is my latest novel. But
Tell us about...
It's more the action adventure kind of thing. There is a relationship that develops in it, and the main characters do end up together in the end. But it's not. Again, it's not your typical. It's the and more. You know, it's not your typical romance at all.
Because whatever romance is in it is not the main focus.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. Yes.
All right. Well, and of course, if somebody's looking for a romance, they're wanting that to be front and center. So, okay. And you had mentioned earlier too that Phantoms is one of your earlier efforts that you've sort of resurrected, polished up.
Exactly.
Yes?
I have what I call manuscripts under the bed, which is where all the many books that never found a home anywhere else, that I couldn't get an agent, I couldn't get a publisher for. But by the time I started getting those no's on those manuscripts, I had already moved on to something else, and I was like, oh well. So it went in a box and it went under the bed. But the content is still there, and the stories are stories that I love. And I don't think there's anything unreadable about them. They're just maybe not to the level of an agent, you know, wanting to represent it, but it doesn't mean it's not a great story. And so what I did was I thought, I'm gonna pull some of those out and look at them and polish them up, as you said, and they're all gonna have basically a similar cover, and it says Manuscripts Under the Bed. You know, and then the titles will be different, and they're all different stories.
Yeah, but that's the thing that holds them together, is that they were your manuscripts that didn't go maybe on the first round of
right,
trying to find
right.
representation or publication
Right.
for it, which makes sense because that's why they tell you in writing school or non-writing school, keep writing.
Keep writing.
Right.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. You were talking about not getting representation or publication, which reminds me of our discussion about some of your previous publishers, because I think, well, you've been traditionally published and you've self-published. And so you did start out traditionally published, correct? And a publisher that you were published under was actually a publisher that I liked a lot. I used to love to read the authors that they publish. How do you say it again?
Sam Hine.
Sam Hine. I loved that publisher, and
I did too.
Yeah, it was an indie publishing. Was it
Well,
indie-ish? It was a small publisher.
Small,
I should
and
say.
they started out publishing ebooks first.
Right.
And initially, when I published with them, it took 10 months to get a print version done.
Whoa. Okay.
So yeah, but they actually had a lot of authors who have gone on to some pretty big success.
Right.
Started at Sam Hine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing them up too. Is that so? That publisher went out of business after quite a few years of.
I think 10 years they were in business.
Because
Yeah.
I think I followed them at least about 4 years. When I discovered them, I'm like, woo, what's the newest thing that they have out? And so they went under, and this is where it kind of catapulted you into that no man's land between traditional publishing and self-publishing.
Exactly.
You want to talk just a teeny bit about that? I mean, because I'm sure it's kind of painful and whatever.
Stabbed to the heart. I had published 6 books with them. I had an editor that I loved. They had been really good to me. I'm not great at marketing my books. And probably a lot of the other authors they had were not that great at marketing their books either.
Right.
Because they were known for bringing in new voices. So
Right.
they had a lot of less experienced authors. I didn't realize even then how important that was. So that probably impacted sales, I'm sure.
Oh yes, because
And-
people don't know that they're out there. The books are out there.
True.
Yeah.
And a lot of their authors that were the big sellers springboarded to other publishers from
right.
them. So they lost that income stream. Anyway, I had published 6 books with them. Great experience. Had 2 more under contract, and they went out of business. And it was, I think, really heartbreaking for them, for the owner, and for everybody involved.
Yeah.
But they were wonderful. I got my rights back to all of my books.
And that's important.
Very important because some
not every-
publishers are known for tying up rights in perpetuity. And
like that.
yeah, you really have to beware of your contract terms.
Right.
So
And that's something difficult, though, because oftentimes people are like, oh, I'm published. And so you don't look at the terms that you're signing away or not signing away.
And that was the other great thing about Sam Hine was they would negotiate contracts, which a lot of publishers, here it is, that's what happened with my first book, Hidden Assets.
Hidden Assets.
They were basically like, here's your contract. Didn't negotiate it at all. There were a couple things in there I didn't like. And I learned a lesson there, which is walk away.
Right.
If you're not happy with the terms and they're not willing to negotiate, walk away.
Right.
And if you don't understand what you're signing, you need to get an attorney to explain it to you and make sure you're not giving up rights
Everything.
that you don't want
To give up.
Right.
Right.
Because that intellectual property now is what publishers are looking to hang on to, because
Right.
that's how their companies are valued. So you really, if you're going to get into the business, you better start to understand the business of publishing.
And I'm glad you said that, yes, because, most of us, we're like, oh, I'm published. Because the first time that I got a publication was actually an essay in a book. It was an anthology. And I didn't look at it at all. I just said, okay, and I think that I did not get fleeced, but I probably could have negotiated something a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I was just fortunate that the person who was doing the book, they were being good. They were being a good person and not
ethical.
Yes.
They were being ethical.
Right, and not totally taking everything and stuff. So yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So you had to move away from the traditional publishing. So did you just jump head first into this self-publishing thing, or did you take a little time and go, oh dear God, what do I do?
more the, oh dear God, what do I do now?
Right.
I mean, I knew I could, since I had the content, I had all those manuscripts reverted to me. I could re-release them, get new. I could have bought the covers that they had from
Right.
Samhain, but at that point I thought I probably need to update the covers.
Well, right.
And I did re-release 2 of them.
Okay.
But it's one of those time-consuming, behind-the-scenes processes that people who just look at your book think, oh, isn't that nice, she wrote a book. But they don't see the work that goes into getting that book there.
Right.
And it's incredibly time-consuming.
Oh yeah.
Even just picking out cover art. I mean, the number of emails back and forth between me and a cover artist on every single book.
Right.
It's like, I don't like that font. Oh, the background's good, but I don't like the guy.
Right.
You know, can you do my name in a different, you know, I mean,
Right.
it's just endless. It's endless.
And people really don't have a clue, because
No.
that's the publishing part.
Right,
But then there's the marketing part,
right. It's,
besides the writing part.
speaking of time-consuming,
Yeah.
you know, and there's you'll always see, you know, blogs or suggestions, you know, how to market your book in 15 minutes a day, you know, or something like that. And
Yeah.
you have to connect with readers, and you have to build a relationship with your readers. That's
more
that's why
important.
they're gonna, you know, be interested in your book.
Right, because they're
But-
interested in you as an author, you possibly as a person, depending upon, I guess, what your aim is when you're doing blogs or you're doing interviews or what have you. So yeah.
Yeah, but social media is a big way to connect with readers. But if you're not really good at social media, which I don't consider myself to be, I'm not very good. I'm not very techie.
Oh.
And so it's a chance, you know, when you don't grow up with that kind of stuff. I mean, my
yes, I
kids are
know.
like, you know, my daughter's on Instagram doing the, you know, and it's up there and it's perfect and it's cute. And I'm like the sloth. You see the picture of the sloth? That's what I'm like on social media. So
I'm sorry.
you
I'm
know,
sort of in the
hashtag
middle.
awkward selfie post. You know, I mean, that's me. I'm never going to be the shiny, polished. Oh, look at that great meme.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
no. If you see something a little bit off and you know doesn't look quite right, that's probably my post.
God. Well, most of the time I don't even try to do the meme thing, you know. I just steal somebody else's GIF, however you pronounce it. See? And and I'm like, oh, that looks cool.
You're
That'll
almost
illustrate
as techie as me.
Yeah. I mean, I can do quite a bit of it actually, but learning the rhythms, because each social media outlet has different rhythms. And if you don't figure out the difference between Twitter and Facebook, you're in trouble, because it's a big difference.
It really is.
It's a big
It
difference.
really is.
And you gotta
It's
negotiate
a high
all
learning
that.
curve, man.
It is, but you say it's a high learning curve, but look what you've done.
I know.
So like you've gotten your stuff traditionally published, which is a feat in and of itself, because, well, it's just a feat. And then a lot of people would have lost that traditional publisher and went, well, okay, and gave it up. And I'm sure that your first thought was, well, okay, but then you've done this.
You know, and part of that is I don't have a lot of time to create the perfect query letter, send it to, you know, research agents for my genre,
Yeah.
send it out, hope that I get a reply, which if they're not interested, you will never hear from them anyway.
That's true. A lot of them.
And then let's say you get representation from an agent. I mean, that is a feat
Yes.
unto itself.
Yes,
if you
it
can
is.
get a good agent to represent your book. And then there's the process of them sending the book out to their editors that they think might be interested.
Right.
Waiting to hear on that.
Yeah, that is
And
a long
then
period of time.
let's say somebody buys that book. An editor loves it, buys it for her house. You're looking at another 18 months,
Yes.
probably at least, before that book is going to see the light of day.
Right.
I'm old.
But it's true though. Time is clicking, and you're not going to get that time back.
I just decide, and the other thing is that all of the upheaval and the changes with like the Barnes and Noble.
Oh, gosh.
That deal.
Right.
You know, as far as print books go, there's not a whole lot of places now, you know, although indie bookstores are coming back. But,
Right. Thank God.
you know, and Books A Million is still there.
Yeah.
But there's not like, you know, what, 20 years ago?
No.
30 years ago?
No,
I
it's
used to love going into Barnes and Noble.
Oh, God,
we went
yes.
in there all the time.
That's
It was
true.
wonderful. And there's not a lot of place for that now.
No.
And not like it's not like it used to be,
No,
let me
it's
just
not.
say.
It's not. It's not.
And so I like the freedom of, I've finally given myself permission, even though the experts will tell you, you should do this, you should do that, you should. And it's like, I don't have to do any of that.
No, not if you're the person at the wheel.
Exactly.
And driving that
And
bus.
I don't have to worry about somebody else taking my rights away from me.
Yeah.
And I can write what I want. I can pick and choose my editor, my cover,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
my release date. And if I fail, well,
Right.
oh well,
Right.
you know. So
No, I understand, because I do know someone who shopped her book around, and it wound up going through, I think, 3 publishing houses, because one would keep it for a little bit, and then they go, oh, no, thank you. And it kept going, and then there was a lull in between, and then it was one of those things where she tried one more time, and a person, a agent decided to pick it up and shop it to yet another publishing house. And now, after I don't know how many years, but it was a ridiculous amount of years, her book is coming out. Well, it's in print now, and what have you. But like you say, how much time do
long
you have?
process. It's a really long
It was
process.
a really long process.
And as fast as everything moves these days, even technology, you know, you could write something like you're saying, and it comes out 3 or 4 years later, and it's like, oh, that's odd. It's old
Right.
technology that you put in your
And so
book.
you have to be careful about that. So oftentimes it's like you're already having to write the story or write the book a few times. First draft, second draft, 117th draft,
Yeah.
till the point that it's ready. And then you shop it around, somebody gets it, and then, and then you might have to write it yet another time to update everything.
And that happens all the time. Agents will even edit your book before they'll send it out. And I mean, I've seen that scenario too, where an agent said, change this, this, and this, and so the author did, and then it went to the editor, and the editor was like, I like it, but it shouldn't have this, this, and that. You know, so
You just have to get used to
it's
that.
the wacky world of publishing.
That is true. And oh my gosh, I'm looking at the time. It is almost like kaput.
Oh boy. Well,
But
this was fun.
It was fun. And I'll say again, that's the reason why I say you're sort of the epitome of today's author. Because you've gone through all of the different stages. You're learning all this new stuff. You know the importance of trying to have an online presence. self-publishing, book designers, inside design. And we as writers, we have to know all those sort of things.
Sure.
We really do.
I have a little clip on my desk. I've had it for years. I cut it out of Writer's Digest, and it says, "Wannabe writers give up easily. Successful writers never do."
And that is very true. I think that's the best way to end this conversation. I thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
No problem, no problem. And I want to say to you, audience, thank you for giving us your time. And thank you for watching Writer's Den.